Hello, everybody. Ben Rogers here, the Raptors Digest. Riker, it's been about a month since the Kawhi Leonard trade, and he's a Toronto Raptor. And do you think that he has a possible chance at winning MVP this season?
Yep, certainly. I mean, there's a lot of factors to consider, of course. And this includes team performance, individual performance, other people that are also in contention for the MVP. And then the big question mark on whether he's going to have the proper attitude and mindset to go out there and be the Kawhi Leonard of 2 seasons past, or if he's going to be, a guy that's lethargic or wanting to stay on the bench, unsure of his future. So there's a lot of things to consider, but I think we're both going to come to the conclusion that it's possible, if not likely.
Yeah. Well, I 100% agree. Kawhi Leonard is currently 6th on the MVP odds to win MVP. They're betting at him as being the 6th best player. And you mentioned a lot of criteria that goes into winning MVP. And we can just break those down one by one. And the first one that is synonymous with an MVP is team success. And if you want to win an MVP, you have to be the for sure best player on a top tier team in the league. And the Toronto Raptors, obviously first seed last season, they're coming into an Eastern Conference now that is regarded as improved despite LeBron James leaving, especially with the fact that Kyrie and Gordon Hayward are getting healthy for the Celtics. I think, as both of us believe, the Toronto Raptors can make the first seed over the Boston Celtics. I think that would be a huge play and a huge boost for Kawhi Leonard's odds to win MVP.
Of course, yeah. But, I mean, we'll also consider that among the East, there's really not many MVP contenders, candidates, whatever you want to call it. You can make the argument Giannis possibly, but neither of us foresee the Milwaukee Bucks having a better regular season record, because essentially they're in the same, or he's in the sort of the same position as Kawhi Leonard, where if he performs to his best ability, then that's the best that the Milwaukee Bucks will do, right? It's not the situation of the Boston Celtics where if Kyrie Irving is injured, they can still have amazing playoff success, whatever. It's not a playoff thing, but of course the Boston Celtics are more well-rounded, so I don't think that they have an MVP candidate on their team. The only players I think in the East would be Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, but I mean, they're still pretty young. They're not as established as Kawhi Leonard. So really the competition is between, LeBron James, Anthony Davis. We'll get into that in a minute. But, I think that the East is the Toronto Raptors to lose, I think, because there's people that are pinning Boston Celtics as the better team. But if Kawhi Leonard can bring this completely shuffled Toronto Raptors team to the first seed, then he's making a great argument for himself.
Most definitely. And you mentioned it. The Eastern Conference, Giannis Antetokounmpo could have the stats to compete with Kawhi Leonard, but we neither of us see the Milwaukee Bucks having the team success for him to win an MVP award. And you mentioned LeBron James and Anthony Davis, right? So they're going to have the numbers to compete with Kawhi Leonard. They might actually have better statistical averages. But do you see the New Orleans Pelicans or the Los Angeles Lakers having the team success to actually make it to produce an MVP player?
The team success? It's really interesting. Definitely not the Pelicans, right? But Anthony Davis has consistently been in the MVP running, right? But the Lakers is that one weird team that I don't see how they're making a team for success. And there's a lot of NBA analysts that are saying this Lakers team is going to be really good. They're going to challenge the Warriors. I don't see it. I mean, they're putting a bunch of playmakers around LeBron James, which is not, that's essentially the same thing as the Cleveland Cavaliers. You need spot-up shooters. You need guys that can finish their shots, and you're putting, Rajon Rondo and Lance Stevenson, Lonzo Ball, a bunch of guys that, they're the creators and not the finishers. So I don't know how this Lakers team will ultimately kind of come together, but I think if LeBron James has a season that he can bring the Lakers to, a top seed, then that will be the best story probably of the NBA, and past MVP votes have gone towards players that have the best story and not necessarily the best statistics.
I 100% agree. A narrative is key for winning an MVP. You look at Russell Westbrook a couple years ago, right? He even overcame the team success thing, but he averaged a triple-double, which is something that was unprecedented, hadn't been done in about 40, 50 years, so he was given the MVP award for that. James Harden screwed over for the MVP the year before, so he won it last year. He wanted to come back and fight. But Kawhi Leonard also has one of those narratives going for him as well. He barely played last season. He was a disgruntled star, got sent to Siberia, as all the NBA news reporters put it. He's going up against a powerhouse, a super team in the Eastern Conference. Without Kyle Lowry is an all-star. He's a super. I think he's a star player in the NBA. He's not recognized that across the league, so that plays a benefit to Kawhi's MVP chances. If he can be the lone, universally known star on a team and bring that success after not playing a full season, do you think that narrative tops the Los Angeles Lakers narrative?
No.
Okay.
I don't. Because the Toronto Raptors have never been seen preferably amongst the American media, and this is really, we don't know what the GMs think, we don't know what the other players think, but what we see is that oftentimes, it's the big name teams that get the recognition, right? Mm-hmm. We look at the Christmas games, right? Toronto Raptors have never been chosen. Of course, we're looking at this as a business with market and money, and those factors need to be considered heavily. But I think that if in order to make a good appeal for a true MVP candidate, you also need for the league to be watching the games. And if the Toronto Raptors are not getting that airtime, even if a person with as much sort of recognition as being a great player as Kawhi Leonard, I don't think that it would trump the Los Angeles Lakers, because they're one of the oldest teams in the history. They have so many championships behind them. They have the best player in the world on the team. I think that narrative would surpass the Toronto Raptors. The one thing that I would consider, though, is if you do have a head-to-head battle between Kawhi Leonard and LeBron James, right? If we're considering that one of these two players is going to win, and in the regular season, if the Toronto Raptors can continuously beat the Los Angeles Lakers or the Houston Rockets or the Pelicans, which they should, if they can beat the teams of the players that are also in the running for MVP, then I think that would speak more preferably towards Kawhi Leonard, because you'd have to be like, all right, this is a good story, but Kawhi Leonard is shutting down the other MVPs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I 100% agree, because the MVP is almost a subjective award to the people that vote, right? They want the most exciting MVP, the biggest. It's almost like a storyline award. It never really goes to the best player. But we both think that LeBron James is the main competition for this award. And you mentioned the smaller market ideal. Well, obviously Toronto's not a small market, but small in the American media's eyes. But Kawhi Leonard in 2016 was fourth in the MVP voting for playing for the San Antonio Spurs, which is, despite their historic success and their high-class franchise, they get almost less recognition than the Toronto Raptors amongst the American news media, when it's unfoundedly absurd how, because they've been one of the top franchises forever. They deserve more respect. They're in the same boat as the Raptors. He's fourth in MVP voting in 2016 behind KD, Steph, and LeBron, and third in 2017 behind James Harden and obviously Russell Westbrook's triple-double season. So do you think that, because he was able to do that with the San Antonio Spurs, do you think if he ups his game and comes in motivated, ready to go, that he can overcome those things, overcome the neglect for a franchise?
Yeah, it's possible. He's going to have the desire to play. Mm-hmm. I'd be curious, though, what will his stat line be? Because obviously he's going to need to have probably 27, 28 points or more per game. He's going to need to have, a really well-rounded blocks and steals category to prove that he's the best two-way player, I think, if he wants to win MVP, rebounds included. He's going to have to burden a lot of true stats, right? And this is not, we talk about Kyle Lowry as a player that does a lot of things that don't, same thing as OG, that they do a lot of things that don't translate necessarily onto the stat sheet. Yeah, but I think that Kawhi Leonard will need to do everything that translates onto the stat sheet if he wants to win MVP. So my question is, we also talk about Nick Nurse is going to want to shuffle up the rotation as much as possible so he can really understand what the best lineups are leading into playoff time. that could affect also Kawhi Leonard's ability to be consistent. So what do you think he needs to get stat-wise, and what do you think he will get? Because that's, I mean, ultimately, that's going to be the measure of, who's the MVP as well. You need to have the best stats.
Mm-hmm. So the box score counting stats for Kawhi Leonard in 2016-2017, the year before he was injured, he averaged 25 points per game, 6 rebounds, 3 assists. Those are some phenomenal counting stats, and I think fairly are able to put you at the top of the MVP ladder, right? Advanced analytics and everything play also into Kawhi Leonard's favor. So everything that, all the little things that are, don't show up in the counting stats favor Kawhi Leonard, and that's something that a lot of MVP voters look at as well. So you need the counting stats and the advanced stats. So I think if Kawhi Leonard performs, and obviously this whole video is reliant on him still being that superstar, if he is that guy, I think the stats won't be a crazy issue. And you brought up the Nick Nurse thing, right? Nick Nurse is taking over. He's not well known throughout the NBA, at least, amongst the popular media. So it looks like the Raptors fired the, quote, coach of the year for this random guy, and it's almost a new dysfunctional situation, right? But we know that Nick Nurse made the Toronto Raptors offense. We're not 100% sure how he's going to do with everything else, but the direct thing that he did last year was implement this new offense. And it's only going to be further pushed, more shooting threes, more ball movement, and all these things. And if you look at the trade that happened this summer, DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard, looking back at Raptors games, and almost we neglected it last year, but the ball would move so much. But when it ended up in DeMar DeRozan's hands, especially at the end of games, we would revert back to that ISO ball and those tough mid-range, gross-looking offense. Right, I think that change, right, with Nick Nurse at the complete helm now, and Kawhi coming in and replacing DeMar DeRozan, as he's never done that in his career, being an ISO guy playing for Greg Popovich in the Spurs. I think that complete change in scenery, I think that could benefit Kawhi Leonard in a tremendous way, because the Raptors might actually be fun to watch for, mass media audiences.
No, that's true. I think another significant thing to recognize too is that in 2016, if you look at Kawhi Leonard's stats, do you mind repeating them one more time? Do you have them in front of you?
Yeah, 25 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists.
Yeah, so DeMar DeRozan's stats in 2016 was 27 points, 5 rebounds, and 4 assists, so equal, almost better, right? Mm-hmm. But he was not at the same level as Kawhi Leonard, and perhaps that's because what I would think is that it's exactly as you said. If there's ever a big game, right? And this is the game that the majority of the league would be more interested in watching, right? They're not going to watch a DeMar DeRozan get 35 points against the Charlotte Hornets and be like, wow, this guy is an MVP. They're going to watch the big games, they're going to watch the Toronto Raptors versus, the Cavaliers in 2016. And this is the games that DeMar DeRozan would then revert to this ISO ball, the disgusting mid-range jumpers that he doesn't make. And I think that's when they say, okay, this guy, he's a good player for, the teams that they should beat, but he's not the guy that can finish against teams that they need to beat, that they actually have to really fight for. And this is what Kawhi Leonard should be able to excel at for this season at the Toronto Raptors, is that he should be able to make late game baskets, right? Mm-hmm. Because he should be more clutch than DeMar DeRozan. I'm not sure, haven't seen him now play last season, but that is what, he's proven in the past. And then also he should be able to rise against, the biggest teams, the biggest competition. If he can shut down in a game that, like I said, the majority of people will be interested in watching, a game against the Los Angeles Lakers, if he can then shut down LeBron James and then have those 25 points, then he will be considered, way greater than DeMar DeRozan, who had, like I said, equal stats. It's the most important thing is to prove himself in the games that he needs to prove himself.
Yeah. And the advanced analytics show that Kawhi Leonard, even in 2016, obviously there's a difference between the counting stats, the box score stats, and more of the advanced things that factor in defense and, just your impact on a game. Kawhi Leonard always outshined, guys like DeMar DeRozan and even like James Harden in those areas.
Oh, of course.
So those are the areas that, if people don't just take in the box score numbers into account. So Kawhi Leonard's impact is going to be recognized throughout the league, and I think his improvement, because DeMar is a phenomenal player. He's a phenomenal scorer, and he was a great player for the Toronto Raptors. But I think the offense and the impact of flipping DeMar DeRozan into Kawhi Leonard, right, just taking one for one, obviously Jakob Poeltl and Danny Green, but people are only going to care about the Kawhi DeMar replacement. I think just showing how different the Raptors will look, and people won't take into account the Nick Nurse thing, but that will also play a role, but that will get complimented for Kawhi Leonard. He'll be the, quote, reason for that. I think all those things into account will play a role in Kawhi Leonard's stock, MVP stock, rising next season.
Yeah, no, I agree. So essentially, we're both in agreement that it'll probably be between 1 and 2, Kawhi Leonard and LeBron James, assuming they both. Well, I mean, it would be difficult to say that either of them will have a bad season, but it's more likely that Kawhi Leonard would have a bad season given, he's coming off of an injury.
Yeah.
But LeBron James certainly has similar uncertainty whether his team will succeed and how much effort he's going to have to put in, and the whole coaching change and teammate change. So, but if they both perform as the level that they can perform, and if they both have relative team success, then we both think that it'll probably be them as 1 and 2, and then. What would the deciding factor be? What does it take for one to beat the other?
I think if LeBron can make a top 3 seed and we make first seed, I think the Lakers will just edge us out because they're in the Western Conference, and you mentioned it, the LeBron James factor. But as long as Kawhi Leonard performs and brings us to that first seed, the first seed is key for Kawhi Leonard winning MVP. And I don't see the Lakers making that step forward. It's going to be tough to see LeBron have a transcendent season for the Lakers. No one's going to win MVP over that. LeBron's one of the best players of all time. But personally, I think if Kawhi can win the first seed and have solid advanced and box score numbers, along with that impact with flipping him for DeMar DeRozan, the league sees that. I think he's going to have a phenomenal shot at winning MVP.
Yep.
But no one's beating LeBron having a transcendent season.
That's absolutely true. All right, so maybe we'll cut it off there.
One final thing. Final
thought.
Okay?
Let's do it.
So we kind of wrote off Anthony Davis at the beginning of the season. Or at the beginning of this podcast, sorry. Not the season.
Yeah.
So if Anthony Davis, because obviously he lost Boogie Cousins, lost Rajon Rondo, if he can bring that team to a home court advantage in the playoffs, do you see him maybe edging out LeBron and Kawhi Leonard?
Yeah, well, it would take a special season. It would take a really special season. But I think that, if they were fourth seed, and he would have to average, and this is just
ridiculous
pure
numbers.
stats, he would have to have ridiculous numbers. Like, I think he would probably have to have a season where he's, beat some sort of record. He would have to have, like 40 points and double-digit rebounds and a lot of blocks per game. Like he would need to have some sort of really recognizable stats or some sort of recognizable, notable achievement that he has during the regular season that would separate him from other power forwards or other people of his age. But I mean, that is a good point. If he can bring this Pelicans team that's never been good, really, to the fourth seed and have some sort of crazy numbers to support it, then I think he very well could, because his name is always in the mix, and he is undoubtedly one of the better big men in the league. But I mean, he also now has the competition, and I think that this is important to consider as well, that his impact in the league now is going to become less because of the other big men that are now starting to blossom, such as Joel Embiid or Kristaps Porzingis, if he comes back this season, has a good season. Like, the more big men that are playing well and having similar numbers, the less impressive it becomes that Anthony Davis is putting up those numbers.
That's a very fair point. I think we're both in agreement that Kawhi Leonard could definitely win MVP, assuming Raptors take the first seed and he has good numbers, as long as no one else in the league has a transcendent season.
Yep.
But let us know what you guys think. We've talked long enough on this MVP. Let us know in the comment section below. Did we miss out on anybody? Is there anyone we're forgetting, overlooking? Could Fred VanVleet win MVP? Right? Let us know in the
I hope
comment
so.
section below. You're the best for making it this far. Check out the Twitter, the Instagram, all that cool stuff. Raptors news is going to keep on coming. The season is just around the corner, so subscribe. Stay tuned in the channel.
Cheers.